Tonight, ripple effects, new chaos and frustration after a software security update cripples computers worldwide.
I'm frustrated. I'm really frustrated.
Airports back online, but still struggling after the tech meltdown. New delays and cancellations for passengers, luggage piling up. Is there a fast fix?
I'm Elise Preston in Los Angeles, where passengers fear this chaos could happen again.
Also tonight, digging in. President Biden, fighting COVID, vows to return to campaigning, even as more Democrats today urge him to drop out.
Hey, hey! Ho, ho! Thank you, Joe. It's time to go!
While Donald Trump and J.D. Vance hit the trail in Michigan for their first rally.
I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns in Grand Rapids, where security is tight and people have been lined up for hours to see the former president.
Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, remembered tonight as a fierce champion of people. Israel strikes back after a deadly Houthi rebel attack on Tel Aviv. Plus, the U.S. Navy exonerates 258 black sailors unjustly punished after a deadly World War II blast. Why families say it was long overdue. And later, in our Weekend Journal, we meet Tiki, chatting up customers on the morning coffee run.
This is the CBS Weekend News from New York with Adriana Diaz.
Good evening. We begin with the global computer crisis. The worst may be over, but the outage is still causing problems. Microsoft estimates that 8.5 million computers running Windows were disabled by the tech outage. It's the first time the company has provided a number for affected computers. But tonight, countless hospitals, government agencies, and businesses, including airlines, are working overtime to get back online. The outage has led to chaos and frustration, including at airports. Today, more disruptions and delays after the faulty software update caused worldwide chaos. CBS's Elise Preston is in Los Angeles with the latest. Elise, good evening.
Adriana, good evening to you. So far, more than 1,700 flights have been canceled across the country today. Here at Los Angeles International Airport, passengers are scrambling to get on new flights and find their luggage. Long lines, piles of luggage, and travelers pushed to the limit.
You might not be back till Monday. I'm like, Monday?
Millions of passengers feeling the fallout today of the largest IT outage in history, the CrowdStrike software meltdown.
This is all luggage from people, flights canceled or waiting for a different flight. It's been stressful.
From Malaysia to Mexico, Europe and the U.S., flyer frustration builds as airlines struggle for a second day to get online.
They couldn't get us out till Monday afternoon.
Delta has scrapped at least 1/4 of its flights, with the most disruption at Atlanta's airport. Half of United's flights are delayed, with its Houston hub a trouble spot. The outage also impacting operations at our nation's ports, borders, hospitals, 911 call centers, and more.
Small businesses, large businesses, spending the whole weekend trying to get their systems back online. This is not a sort of champagne moment now that maybe the panic's over.
The fix isn't fast. It's machine by machine, where each computer needs to be manually rebooted and updated.
Has this been oversold or undersold?
The magnitude of this has probably been underestimated around the globe. This is not 1, 2, 3, snap of the finger. I mean, this will go on probably for the next week, the lingering impact.
Tired travelers will have to practice patience.
It stinks. It's scary.
Why is it scary?
Because it could happen again.
Now, if your flight is canceled and you choose not to get on a different one, you can ask for your money back. Adriana?
Elise Preston, thank you so much. Tonight, President Biden is at his home in Rehoboth, Delaware. He is recovering from COVID and vowing to return to the campaign trail. This as the drumbeat of calls from Democrats for Biden to end his reelection campaign grows louder. CBS's Willie James Inman is in Rehoboth for us tonight. Willie, good evening.
Good evening to you, Adriana. President Biden's physician says his condition continues to improve, but as he is in isolation and fighting COVID, he is vowing to return to the campaign trail next week, even as a political firestorm over his future continues to grow in the Democratic Party.
CBS News has learned President Biden is deeply frustrated amid a push from within the Democratic Party to end his presidential bid. Today, California Democrat Mark Takano added his name to the growing list of at least 36 Democrats who have publicly said Biden should step down. Some Democrats are supporting the president while pitching an alternative should he leave the race.
What gives me a lot of hope right now is that if President Biden decides to step back, we have Vice President Kamala Harris, who is ready to step up, to unite the party, to take on Donald Trump, and to win in November.
Despite the mounting public pressure, the Biden-Harris campaign is moving ahead with plans for Biden to return to the campaign trail, although today a campaign spokesperson would not say when or where that would happen. Behind the scenes, the campaign is working to rally the troops. During an all-hands call on Friday, campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon said, "When you give me polls, I'm going to give you direct voter contact." A recent CBS News poll has Trump leading Biden nationally among likely voters by 5 points.
CBS News has learned that former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton are encouraging donors to support President Biden's campaign amid concerns over whether or not he can defeat former President Donald Trump. In fact, today, more than $2 million was raised at a fundraiser in Massachusetts in which Vice President Kamala Harris attended. Adriana?
Willie James Inman, thank you so much. Now to the Trump campaign. Tonight, the former president is in the battleground state of Michigan, holding his first rally with his new running mate, J.D. Vance. That's where we find our Caitlin Huey-Burns. Caitlin, good evening.
And good evening to you, Adriana. Well, it was just 1 week ago today that Donald Trump survived an assassination attempt at a campaign rally very much like this one. The big difference today, this is being held indoors. The security has been tightened, and the campaign is hoping to send a message that the show must go on.
Former President Donald Trump and Senator J.D. Vance are campaigning together for the first time in the battleground state of Michigan. Wearing a smaller bandage on his injured ear, Trump recalled the attempt on his life.
Think of it, it was exactly 1 week ago today, almost to the hour, even to the minute. Last week, I took a bullet for democracy.
With the event here today, the Trump campaign is signaling their path to victory runs through the Midwest.
Less than 4 months from now, we are going to win Michigan. We are going to take back the White House.
This will be my 81st Trump rally that I've attended.
Supporters who lined up for hours before Trump took the stage said they came to send a message.
I'm here to show that we're not afraid. I would gladly take a bullet for President Trump.
Jared Petrie says he was at the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania last week and was among the first in line in Grand Rapids.
Definitely just shows, resilience and toughness. We got to move forward and push ahead.
But as the campaign pushes ahead, questions remain about last week's historic security failures. CBS News has learned from law enforcement sources that the gunman flew a drone near the area around the rally site days before the event began.
And many of those questions will be put to the U.S. Secret Service director when she appears on Capitol Hill to testify on Monday. Adriana?
Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you. Today, Texas Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee is being remembered as a champion for progressive causes and, of course, for leading efforts to make Juneteenth a national holiday. The 15-term Congresswoman died in Houston Friday. She revealed in June that she'd been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Today, President Biden recalled Lee as unrelenting in her leadership. Sheila Jackson Lee was 74 years old. Today in Dallas, firefighters remained on the scene of a massive fire that destroyed part of the city's historic First Dallas Baptist Church. More than 60 units responded to the fire that sent smoke billowing over the city. Thankfully, there were no deaths or injuries. The landmark sanctuary, which was built in 1890, largely collapsed. The church, with 16,000 members, is led by Pastor Robert Jeffress.
This is a tragic loss for our church. But thank God the church is not composed of bricks and wood. It's composed of people. And our people are absolutely more determined than ever to take the good news of Jesus Christ throughout the world.
The cause of the fire remains under investigation. To the Middle East now. Today, Israel said it had carried out airstrikes on a city in Yemen controlled by the Houthi militant group. The attack sparked massive fires and caused deaths and injuries, according to both Israeli and Yemeni officials. The attack came a day after the Iran-backed Houthis claimed responsibility for a rare drone attack in Tel Aviv. CBS's Deborah Patta is in Jerusalem tonight with the latest.
The Israeli strikes on a Houthi-controlled port appear to be the first on Yemeni soil since the October 7 Hamas attack and threaten to open a new front even as Israel's bombing campaign in Gaza intensifies. The world may be paying less attention to the war in Gaza, but that doesn't mean the scale of suffering has diminished. In fact, American Dr. Mohammed Soubeh, who's just completed a second volunteer mission to Gaza, says it is worse than ever. The daily barrage of deadly Israeli airstrikes is now compounded by a dramatic rise in infectious diseases.
And it feels like there's a systematic effort to decimate this population.
The hunger crisis has also deepened. Every day, crowds of children queue with their parents for food. Many leave with empty plates.
What we're finding is there are so many children who go to sleep without having had any meal for the day, without having had enough drinking water.
Hospitals are overrun with civilian casualties and are running out of supplies. Patients often treated on the floor due to a lack of beds, and Soubeh tells us that's not all.
Something as simple as Tylenol and ibuprofen we have no access to right now, which is mind-boggling.
Every day, he said, they are forced to amputate limbs. Around 2/3 are children who would normally not need such a procedure. The other day, it was a 9-year-old boy hit in a missile strike.
Abdurrahman sustained injuries to his left leg, and due to the lack of supplies, we could only amputate his leg.
For Dr. Soubeh, this mission has been soul-destroying.
It's gut-wrenching as a human being to witness this firsthand. It can end within a day, but there is a deliberate choice not to end it.
Adding to the misery of Palestinians in Gaza, the World Health Organization says it's found polio in sewage samples, Adriana, threatening a new health crisis.
Deborah Patta in Jerusalem, thank you. Tonight in Bangladesh, a nationwide curfew and communications blackout is in effect. Its goal is to quash student-led demonstrations that have become intensely violent, protesting government job quotas. So far, more than 100 people have died, including at least 50 Friday. The protests, which began peacefully on campuses, has now spread to nationwide unrest. In this country, the U.S. Forest Service today enlisted the help of the Defense Department, activating 4 C-130 aircraft to fight increasing wildfires across the West. One of the largest is the Fork Fire near Glendora, California. It's already burned through more than 330 acres of Angeles National Forest. This comes as a new heat wave is scorching the West. Warnings and advisories are in place from Canada down to Mexico as temperatures approach or exceed triple digits. Spokane, Washington will hit 108 degrees tomorrow, topping the last record by 3 degrees. Straight ahead on the CBS Weekend News, exonerated after 80 years, why the Navy finally cleared the names of black sailors involved in a World War II accident. And meet a rare old bird and his pet cockatoo. Today, a memorial service was held in Concord, California, marking 80 years since one of the largest military disasters of World War II. This year's event comes just days after the exoneration of more than 200 black sailors punished after the incident. In attendance at today's service, family members who've demanded a hard look at the military's complicated record on race. CBS's Elizabeth Cook has more.
In Concord, California, a city about 30 miles from San Francisco, are the remains of a pier. It was here in 1944 where disaster struck.
The explosion of 2 munition ships in San Francisco Bay shocks the world.
It was so devastating. It actually knocked him off his
bunk.
Daryl Meek's father, Freddie, had just returned to the barracks. So too had Cyril Shepard. Carol Cherry is his daughter.
So he was reading a letter from home when the explosions happened.
The blast killed 320 people and injured 400 others and heavily damaged the town of Port Chicago. Most of the dead, young black sailors who loaded ordnance onto ships.
They received very little training.
Segregation meant they were barred from seafaring jobs, but they could load munitions.
He talked about these big bombs you can't get your arms around, and he says, and these guys weren't trained. He says, all you can hear is bam, bam.
After the blast, surviving white officers were sent on leave to recover. Black sailors were ordered back to work, including picking up human remains.
It had to be traumatic. It had to be traumatic.
258 sailors refused to go back to work, citing safety concerns. After warnings and threats from senior officers, most complied, but 50 men held out.
The 50, they stood together and they said, kill us, but we're not going to continue to work under these conditions.
The sailors, including Meeks and Shepard, were convicted of mutiny, sentenced to hard labor along with dishonorable discharges. It took until this week for the Navy to clear their names.
Here's a letter from Secretary today.
All the sailors exonerated. Their convictions ruled unjust.
The findings of guilty in the sentence are set aside.
This exoneration was a long time coming.
But 80 years later, none of the Port Chicago 50 were alive to see it.
They deserve to be in our history books. And I'm not speaking just of black history, but they deserve to be in American history books.
He's our hero because he stood with those 50, those other 49 sailors. They stood for what was right.
Justice at last. Elizabeth Cook, CBS News, Concord, California.
And so overdue. Still ahead on the CBS Weekend News, the last living Apollo 11 astronaut marks a historic first.
The Eagle has landed.
Today marks 55 years since the world heard those words as the crew of Apollo 11 landed on the moon. The galaxy, it seems, is celebrating as well by giving us a full moon. 94-year-old Buzz Aldrin, the only surviving member of that crew, remembered the historic moment today, saying on social media, "I am still inspired by what we all saw and did, the best of America and the best of humanity." And the WNBA All-Star Game tips off tonight. The league's best plays Team USA as a warm-up to the Olympics. The WNBA team has two rookies you may have heard of, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. This season, the former college rivals have driven the league to record ratings and attendance.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Everybody can wear their get-along shirts together for one day at least.
Tonight's game is the first time Reese and Clark have played together as teammates. Next on the CBS Weekend News, the Pennsylvania parrot who is the talk of the town. We end tonight with a morning ritual in Pennsylvania that might make you do a double take. In our weekend journal, how a man and his pet make an everyday coffee run, one to remember. Here's CBS's Madeline Wright.
A 28-year-old cockatoo on the back of a pickup truck is a rare sight in most places, but not here in Delaware County, Pennsylvania.
Tiki's here every day. Every day he's here. Every time I pull up, he greets me with a...
Meet Tiki's owner, 84-year-old Bill Wasson. The former cockatiel breeder brings his feathered companion to the local Wawa every day so the bird can get out of the house and socialize. Wasson buys coffee and a newspaper inside, while Tiki waits patiently outside, a cherished morning ritual for the last 8 years.
See, this is his routine. He knows that I'm coming, and then we're going to go in there and we're going to have coffee and something to eat.
Wasson feeds Tiki bread dipped in coffee. He says his pet is family.
He's like my son. You know, that's what he thinks. I'm his dad, who knows? You know, because he don't tell me. He just shows me.
Wasson says Tiki is unlike any bird he's ever owned. Smart, affectionate, and independent.
People see him and they come over to him and talk to him.
Tiki loves chatting with customers.
You being good?
They admire his beauty and incredible beak strength.
And peach feathers. I love the peach feathers. Actually, I've never seen a bird this color.
Alrighty.
After breakfast, the pair heads to a second Wawa down the street for a change of scenery. Wawa's general manager says with Tiki by his side, Wasson's more than just a fixture in the community. He's a Delaware County legend.
It's a Delco thing, for sure. So tell me you're from Delco without telling me you're from Delco. You see the bird and you know where you are.
A man and his bird.
He's a good boy.
Spreading joy to those around them. Madeline Wright, CBS News, Delaware County, Pennsylvania.
And he whistles, too. That is the CBS Weekend News for this Saturday. First thing tomorrow, CBS Sunday Morning. Then it's Face the Nation. Margaret Brennan's guests include Ohio Congressman Mike Turner and West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin. I'm Adriana Diaz in New York. Good night.